Good morning, good people. Today is Tuesday, September the 16th, 2025. I hope everyone has a great Tuesday today. I wanted to come on here and speak to you guys like always. So me and my wife was having a conversation about life after death, or whether or not there's a heaven or hell, in which she believes that there is a heaven and as well as there's a hell. And I was watching certain YouTube videos as well, and they were about experiences that these nurses have had when it comes down to someone in their care passing away, in which they basically said that if it's a peaceful passing, then 9 times out of 10 that person ascended into heaven. And typically, as well as when there's a peaceful passing, they say that there's like a sweet smell that may be in the air that they really can't describe because it's just such a pleasant smell. And so for the opposite, as far as when they believe that these people may go to hell, they say that normally they have a violent death, whether that means they're screaming out, or they're saying that it's hot, or they're asking for help. And they say as well there is like a sulfur smell that's in the air when these types of deaths occur. And I personally believe everything that these nurses have experienced, not just because I do believe in heaven and hell, it's just because I believe that you wouldn't have so many accounts from different people saying the same thing. Typically when you have situations like that, whatever that topic is truth. But as well, I've had my own personal experience when it comes down to hell and heaven and death as well. But I want to speak more so about the day that I witnessed what hell is going to be like if people decide not to change, and or if that's someone's destiny. And so this was back in 1995. It was my first year in high school, and we were in the gym at the time. And so it was me and this one of my classmates, who to a certain extent was also a friend of mine. I wouldn't say that he wasn't. We hung out together to a certain extent. I went to his crib, and things like that. But this was when we pretty much first met. We didn't know each other at all. And so if anyone who grew up around the time that I grew up in, maybe even earlier, we know that typically if someone says something negative about you back then, you would say, well, your mama. It was just like a reaction, just like a common response that we would give back in the days. And so he had said something to me, and I responded with that phrase, not knowing that he had lost his mom, that his mom had passed away. And like I say, I was completely unaware of this. And regardless of whether or not someone's mom is dead or alive, that's childish response. That's a childish response. But like I said, I was a child at the time. And so I responded with that phrase, and I kid you not, his response was one of the most angriest response I think I've ever seen in my life. he immediately jumped up off of the bleacher that we were sitting on, and with him jumping up like he did, I responded in the same manner, so we're facing face to face. And he said, and this is me not using the exact words that he said, but basically he said, man, my mama dead. And when he said that, it was like someone had taken a knife and had driven that knife through my heart, because like I said, I didn't know him like that. And so in that time span or whatever have you, I looked to my left. And as I looked to my left, that whole side of the gym appeared to have been on fire, y'all. And it was it wasn't your normal looking fire. It was a fire, which what fire looks like, but it was like a roaring fire, if that makes any sense. It was like it was in like solar flares almost, not like a fire that we would see when you take a lighter or a match and you set a fire in the fireplace. It didn't look like that type of fire. It looked like it was kind of spinning on top of each other in waves, if that makes any sense. And as well, I pictured myself going into the fire. But the only way that I could enter into that fire was by me going down onto my belly and crawling into the fire, because I couldn't walk upright into the fire for whatever reason. And then upon entering into the fire, I didn't burn, so to speak. You go into a fire, something, it burns and it basically turns to ashes. But this wasn't happening. It was like the fire was going, I'm in the fire, and I'm not dying, y'all. But what was being shown to me at the time, in which I didn't really even think much of it outside of the experience, so to speak, that God was showing me what hell fire is going to be like if I and if many others don't change and turn our lives over to Jesus and do what's right. And when I tell you guys, like I said, it was one of the most horrible experiences, gut-wrenching experiences in my entire life. And it's not irony, because everything that God shows us and does is in his time and on his time. And so the school that I attended for high school, all 5 years of high school, because we started in the 8th grade, but this school was called Druid Hills. And anyone who knows about Druid, that Druid is associated with sorcery and witchcraft and not so good things when it comes down to the truth about it. And not only was this school named Druid Hills, but the mascot of this school is the Red Devils. So literally everywhere you turn in the school, there's either the word devils, Red Devils, written on the wall, or there's an image of Satan painted on the walls of this school, y'all. And not thinking about it for the most part, we're just going to school every day and trying to get an education or whatever it may be, not realizing that we're walking the halls of Satan. And so that's one thing that makes this story that much more concrete, if that makes any sense. And then on top of that, the gentleman's name that I had this situation with is named Michael. In which, if anyone reads the Bible, we know about Michael and his angels casting out the devil and his angels. We know that story. And I'm not saying that he's the real Michael and that I may be the evil one, because I pray to God that I'm not. But I'm just trying to paint a picture for you guys, because God does things on his own time. And when it's relevant, it'll be brought back to our memory sometimes to be told to others. But yeah, that's my story, y'all. There's not much more to it. But yeah, I saw what Hellfire looks like. The name of the school is Druid Hills, and the mascot was and still is to this day the Red Devils. But one thing I can say, and I will say before I get off of here, is that as I started growing older, because I played baseball for the high school, and normally, the team will come together before the game and we'll huddle, and you may yell out the mascot of the team, or you may call out the name of your school or whatever it may be when the huddle breaks. And it got to the point where we would not use the school's, I should say, mascot's name. We would not say, go Red, you know what. Even though Druid probably was no better, but we would say, go Druid Hills. On 3, Druid Hills. 1, 2, 3, Druid Hills. You see what I'm saying? We would not say the mascot's name. And I believe because even though we might not have thought a whole lot on that, but because spiritually we knew that that was wrong, that we all agreed subconsciously to not use the mascot's name. But yeah, I just want to tell you guys that little story or whatever have you. And like I say, that was my experience. I don't know if he saw that as well, because if he did, that would be someone who could tell his side of the story. But that's what I experienced that day back in 1995, y'all. But I got to go on into work, and I hope you guys have a great Tuesday, and I'll talk to you soon.